Have you ever heard of a ruler so brutal, so absolutely monstrous, that the Pope himself had to launch a holy war just to stop him? It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, right? But today, we're digging into the true story of a man who terrorized northern Italy for 3 decades, a man who history has all but erased. Let's get into it.
And listen, this isn't some modern writer trying to be dramatic. This is what people who lived back then, people who saw his work firsthand, actually called him. In their minds, he wasn't just a bad guy, he was literally the offspring of evil itself. That was their reality.
And right there, that's the central mystery we're unpacking today. How does a figure so infamous that he triggers a full-blown crusade, one of the most powerful weapons in the medieval church's arsenal, just disappear from the history books? It's a fascinating puzzle, and we're going to put the pieces together.
So, let's formally introduce the man of the hour, Ezzelino III da Romano. He was a Ghibelline, which was a major political party in Italy at the time. To put it simply, this meant he sided with the Holy Roman Emperor in the constant tug-of-war for power against the Pope. And that alliance gave him a ton of power and a very dangerous ally in Emperor Frederick II.
His rise to power was just incredibly swift and savage. He was born a nobleman, but he used that powerful alliance with the emperor to carve out his own personal kingdom across northern Italy. And he wasn't just conquering cities, he was crushing them in the most horrific ways you can imagine.
To really understand Ezzelino, you have to look at what he did to the people under his rule. And his actions in the city of Padua, well, they became the stuff of nightmarish legend, a real testament to his bottomless pit of cruelty.
11,000. Just let that number sink in. That's how many people, men, women, and even children, that Ezzelino is said to have imprisoned in Padua alone. And we're not talking about normal prisons here. Not even close.
He kept them in massive, open-air pits, completely exposed to the sun, the rain, everything. The whole point was the daily misery. They were denied food, water, any kind of shelter, and just left to die slowly, out in the open, as a public warning to anyone who even thought about crossing him. It was cruelty as a form of theater.
And what's truly sickening is how methodical and creative his violence was. This wasn't just the chaos of war. This was systematic torture. We're talking about chopping off noses, hands, and feet. Mass blindings. He would burn entire villages just for the fun of it. One chronicle even reports a single horrifying massacre of 12,000 Paduans. His goal was to break the human spirit completely.
So this level of pure sadism, it eventually reaches the ears of the most powerful man in the Christian world, the Pope, and his reaction was something nobody had ever seen before. He decided Ezzelino wasn't just a political enemy, he was an enemy of God himself.
Now, this really shows you how insane the situation was. Crusades were usually for fighting enemies of the church way out in the Holy Land or against huge groups of heretics. But in 1255, a crusade was called for one reason, and one reason only: to stop one guy, a European, a Christian. It was basically unheard of.
You'd think a papal crusade would be the end of him, right? Game over. But nope. Ezzelino was such a brilliant and ruthless military commander that for years, he actually fought off the crusading armies. He just kept on winning. The Holy War, at least at first, was a total failure.
So if a crusade couldn't take him down, what finally did? Well, Ezzelino's end didn't come from the Pope, but on the battlefield. And even in his final moments, he was as defiant as ever.
And this part of the story is just so revealing. After he was finally wounded and captured in 1259, his enemies, they actually tried to help him. They offered him doctors, food, but Ezzelino wasn't having it. He literally ripped off his own bandages, refused to eat or drink anything, and chose to die from his wounds. He was going to go out on his own terms.
What a life, huh? A whirlwind of pure terror and absolute defiance. So that brings us back to that big question. With a story this insane, this dramatic, why on earth did he get forgotten?
I mean, the contrast is just wild. We all know Dante. He was born just a few years after Ezzelino died. We all know Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man. Their legacies are global. But Ezzelino, a guy who completely dominated that same landscape for 30 years, he's pretty much a ghost outside of Italy.
And here's probably the real answer. See, tyrants who build things, empires, giant monuments, new governments, they tend to be remembered. Ezzelino built nothing. His legacy wasn't in stone or art, it was in pain. His terror was huge, but it was also contained to one region,
And when he died, the scars he left eventually healed, and his story just faded away. And that leaves us with one last, pretty unsettling thought. History isn't just a record of what happened. It's about the stories we choose to tell and to preserve. So the real question isn't just why we forgot Ezzelino, but what it says about us when we let that kind of darkness just quietly slip away.